I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into how to be a dude in the 21st century. It's written by Alex Cordero. This raw and unfiltered book tackles the challenges young men face today, exploring controversial topics like cancel culture, societal norms, and the struggles of staying authentic in a fast-changing world. If you're ready for a no-holds-barred conversation about the future of masculinity and individuality, stay tuned. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Alex, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. Great to see you.
In 2024, going into 2025, do you think it's tough to be a guy nowadays?
I think it can be tough to be a guy. I think that there's a lot of societal pressures from social media, from school curriculums, and just a redefinition of masculinity that's made it extremely difficult for a lot of young men. People in our generation, or I don't know how old you are, but in the previous generation, we had the freedoms to explore, to try and fail, to be creative. And I think those are being stifled right now. I have a chapter that talks about it called The Inner Child, where when we were kids, we just made up our own rules in the playground, and we would just make up our own rules and play within the rules that we made up. We created, and every once in a while, feelings were hurt. A team would get destroyed, but at the end of the day, there were a lot of really important life lessons that are now being missed because we're not allowing the younger generation that same freedoms to explore and to play and to discover and to fail and to
Or
win.
even to fight. I mean, we had rules about fighting. You don't hit below the belt, you don't hit a
Yes.
guy when he's down, and you don't hit a guy with glasses. I mean, we had schoolyard fights, it was part of it. And, nobody was really hurt. Nobody would continue to beat you once somebody said stop or they were down. That was it. So things that are masculine nowadays, unfortunately, are labeled toxic. So
Toxic, that's
if
right.
you're a man who's a high testosterone man and likes to take charge, and you're
Yes.
viewed now as some kind of predator, right?
Yes, well, correct. And that's why I talk a lot about sports. There's a lot of sports references in my book because I feel very strongly about learning how to lose before you learn how to win. We don't just want to win in sport. Actually, more important in sport is losing and how you react right after a loss. I remember as a kid, because I still play basketball up to now, I still play high level tennis. And in these sports, it's very competitive. It's mano in mano. And back in the day, we used to play extremely hard, black eyes, bruises, scratches. But at the end, we shake hands, we have a beer, or we have a laugh. Nowadays, you can't do that because the moment there's any sort of aggression, it's stopped by the powers that be, or it's not advocated or it's not celebrated to play hard and to persevere. One of my chapters is called "Falling Down," where if you fail or you fall down, you just get the heck back up. Nowadays, it's not celebrated. Now they're being told, stay down, self-reflect, see why, what happened. It takes so many more steps to get back up.
Right.
These are some of the chapters I have about sports. I mean, it's not just all about sports, but I'm a firm believer that I think that the younger generation is not playing in sports. They're at home gaming, and they think they're playing sports by Xbox or FIFA or something, but that's
Right.
not real sport.
Right.
Real sport is failing, being humiliated, and then how you react with all those situations, and how you react will be the same thing in real life. So, when we talk about toxicity or toxic males, I firmly believe that we're creating more toxic males now with the environment that the males are growing up in instead of less toxic males. I'm not saying there weren't any toxic males in our generation, but we knew how to lose and we knew how to be gracious and we knew how to get back up and then get better. And I think those are the things now. People are afraid to try. People are afraid to test themselves. And if they do fail, they don't have the processes to deal with that failure. So these are things that I really, try to advocate and try to explore in my book.
Yeah, and also traits that are typically male should not be
Yes,
viewed as negative, and
correct.
traits that are typically female necessarily shouldn't be viewed as positive. I mean, I'm not saying that women are bad and men are bad. Neither are bad. That's what I'm saying. If you're typically feminine, that's wonderful. If you're typically male, that's wonderful. And you should have the freedom to do both. I think that expresses my thoughts better than the first way I put it. But to elevate women up here and saying, oh, their traits are wonderful, and men are down here because they tend to be, guys that push around and shove and are rough.
Uh,
I mean,
yes,
that same guy who pushes, shoves, and rough is a firefighter is going to carry you over his shoulder down a
exactly,
ladder, right?
exactly.
Is going to pull
Or a
you.
protector.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry
No,
to
no,
cut you
you're
off.
right. Go ahead. No, you pick it up from there. But yeah, it's going to
No,
pull you
because
through a parking lot after you've been shot or something.
one of the examples I make is called. I have a chapter called patriotism. So in a life or death situation now, I would want somebody who is a little bit more assertive and who is more motivated and who will get back up. Because if our countries, in the US or Canada, if we're invaded, um, I'm sorry to say that it might be people over 45 or 50 that will fight for our countries. And the younger people might not have the same level of protector instinct to do it because we're taking some of those traits out, so those masculine traits that are traditionally in males, really for the last 200,000 years. Males and females are really um, designed to be distinct. We're not designed to be the same.
Right.
If we were designed to be the exact same, our societies would have broken down a long time ago because we would not be able to create society. We would not be able to procreate and have babies because if we're the exact same, how can we have a baby with the exact same traits?
Right.
So this is why we have unique traits, and it's not all negative to have unique traits to be a male or to be a female. And I think society is pushing so much to equalize all the traits that it is taking away from traditional masculinity, which in the end, um, you know, some of the more dire thoughts that I have or perspective is if these happen, we're going to stop procreating. And when we stop procreating, the whole world will collapse. It's already happening in Japan, where last year there were only 800,000 births compared to the number of aging seniors that are in the population. They're not able to take care of the aging population. Or in Italy, where the birth rate per woman is very low. Even in Canada now, the last studies have shown from 2023 that the birth rates for a woman is now 1.26 per woman, which is a healthy replacement rate is 2.1 or 2.2. And these are things that if we don't sound the alarm, if we don't try to find strength in re-advocate masculinity or healthy masculinity, I'm afraid, Logan, that there might be a dire consequence for the whole world.
Absolutely. We're equal in the eyes of God. We're
Yes,
equal in the eyes of the law, but we're not
absolutely.
equal. Shaquille O'Neal and Caitlin, whatever her name is,
Caitlin
the
Clark,
girl
they're not equal.
basketball player. She's going to get destroyed one on one, even if
Yes.
Shaquille's past his prime.
And
I mean,
Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal player. I've watched her play.
yeah.
But unfortunately, by genetics and by our biological traits, we're not equal.
Exactly, exactly. And a good college basketball player who's male might be able to beat her. I mean, that's just the way it works in life.
The
Is
reality.
everything fair? No, nothing is fair. Some people are born tall, some people are born short, whatever it is, it's, we try, like I said, under the eyes of God, under the eyes of the law,
We're
we're
equal.
equal, but we're not equal when it comes to individual abilities. And that's what makes us great. And that's what makes us
Yes.
strive. And that's what makes us succeed, right?
Well, I'll give you an example for this, if you may. I know we
Sure.
don't have that much time, but in one of my chapters, the chapter is called Carolyn. I befriended a college tennis player, actually from the East, from Connecticut, New York,
Mm.
and she is a D3 college tennis player, and she just graduated last year. And when she came, she went to Victoria, where I was living at the time, and we befriended her, and she joined our male group, and she was a phenomenal tennis player. But for whatever reason, when we played singles, I beat her,
Right.
and that shouldn't be the case because she's a D3 college tennis player in her prime, and I was 52 at the time, a 52-year-old. I mean, I played pretty good tennis, but
Right.
there should be no reason why I should beat her. But this is just, the reality with, the male and female in sports.
Yeah.
And I think she's great, and she beats a lot of male players. I just maybe it was my day, those few times that we played. But that's the reality where if I played a D3 college male tennis player, I probably would get destroyed 6-love.
Right.
So that's just the reality of genetics in sports or gender in sports.
Exactly. Who's the target audience for your book? Who would you like to read this? Who do you think would benefit from it? I think
I
society
think
at large would benefit,
I
but
think
what do you
society
think?
in large would benefit.
Yeah.
I wrote it for the younger male because I noticed that the younger males were really struggling, but that I have a lot of females that I mentioned the book to and that have read the book, and they've said, you know what, this is not just for young males, this is for young people, because I try to encourage resiliency, motivation, to get back up, to learn how to fail, to compete, to have a growth mindset. Carol Dweck wrote a book 25 years ago called Mindset, and I'm a firm believer of a growth mindset. I have two sons, Alex and Sevi, and Alex is 27, and he was a college golfer. He was the lead golfer in his school. They went to nationals twice, and Sevi, who is a college lacrosse player, and he's in Grand Rapids right now. He's in college, and through my own coaching I was able to sort of mentor them to become high level athletes, and the goal for myself is to mentor young people to have the same growth mindset. So it doesn't have to be sports. They could be musicians, they could be artists, they could be business people, but to have a growth mindset, to be able to be process driven and not so results driven. I think we're in a society now because of social media and other pressures where everything is about the result, but it's not about the process. They're not, I don't think they're developing healthy habits when it comes to just, trying their best. And if it doesn't work out, just get back up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about cancel culture and how that negatively impacts our society.
There, that is a great question, Logan. I
Thank you.
mean, the cancel culture in society now, a lot of young people are afraid to step outside the narrow bandwidth of acceptance. The moment they step outside, they freeze up, and their safe space is that narrow bandwidth of existence. And the problem is, back in our generation, we were encouraged to step outside the box, to be outside the box thinkers. There's a black philosopher. His name is Thomas Sowell, and I quote him in the book. And he tries to he's trying to advocate for young black males, and he has the famous saying that I always remember and I always share. I'm not trying to teach people what to think, I'm trying to teach them the ability to be able to think.
Right.
And instead of telling people what to think, we want to encourage them to have free thought so that they can think for themselves. They can have critical thinking skills. And this is, again, part and parcel to growth mindset, to all of these things. We're not trying to develop a generation of fixed mindset thinkers who just listen and nod and obey. We want people to be able to think for themselves. And unfortunately, because of cancel culture, it's so easy to control a lot of people now with the threat of, well, if you say something bad, we're going to cancel you. So now that freedom of thought, that creative spirit, the American spirit, I'm from the Philippines, and I have a great appreciation for the US because in 1945, Douglas MacArthur liberated our country back from the Japanese. He came back to our shores. So my affinity for the US and the American spirit and the American way. And I talk about that with my parents in the 50s when they were starting off. We had the American dream possible even in the Philippines. They became successful because they were working 2 and 3 jobs. And my mom and dad at the time, they ventured and they risked it, went into business, and had the means to be able to immigrate us in 1979 to Canada. Under at that time, President Marcos had martial law in the Philippines, and it wasn't conducive to stay in the Philippines, which is what happened and how I ended up, or my family ended up in Canada.
Mhm.
But that American spirit and American dream, unfortunately, even in the U.S., because I travel a lot in the U.S., My younger son did prep school back in DC and Connecticut. So, I we were able to travel around your country. That American spirit is, unfortunately, it seems like it's diminishing, or it seems like it's trying to be extinguished instead of being celebrated, you know, celebrated to want to succeed and to want to do better for not just for yourself, but for your community, for your family, for your country. It just seems like we're trying to not celebrate it, but do the opposite of it. That creative, that spirit. And I don't know, maybe you can help me with the words, but
Oh, I
that's what
agree.
it
I
feels
think
like.
we've been emasculated here in the
Thank you.
United States. But I think
Or
on
everywhere.
November 5th, the country, the majority of the country said, you know what? We're not going to be run by an invalid any longer. We're going to have a strong leader back in the White House. So I think there was a vote against the cancel culture and against
Yes.
the people who label everything an ism, whether it's sexism, racism,
Yes.
you name it.
And
And
believe it
so,
or not, I talk about that in my book. Being a non, I'm not white.
right.
I talk about how far it's gone. Where my students in Victoria, I've actually had to help them to overcome white guilt because they've been taught that a lot in schools. And I've been teaching a lot of these young white males, believe it or not. I'm the one that's encouraging them not to feel so guilty about, they're even called, unfortunately, colonizers. They're called a lot of really bad things in schools and in society. And I'm trying to encourage them not to believe it. Maybe there was a forefather that did it, but it wasn't them. But they're paying the price for this cancel culture, and that's what a message is in the book, is to try to not be afraid of cancel culture. I have a chapter about having fun, where back in the day, comedians, Sammy Davis Jr.,
Sure.
Andrew Dice Clay, Eddie Murphy, the jokes were so open.
Yeah.
I can't even watch comedy anymore, Logan, because there's nothing funny.
Right.
Everyone is so scared to say anything remotely sensitive,
Controversial. Yeah.
controversial.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, and so these are all topics that I have in the book. I have 101 chapters about different things. But the other thing I write about a lot is love.
Mm.
So I had my first love in 1987. I met her. Her name is Marie, and I wrote a chapter 4 years ago. We were like Romeo and Juliet. We were soulmates.
Mm.
Unfortunately, because we were so much in love, my mom, in her wisdom,
Mhm.
tore us apart for 2 years. He sent me
Right.
back to the Philippines. He tore our love story apart. It was very sad. 36 years, Logan. She was the love of my life, and I was the love of her life. And we lived separate lives for 36 years. This February in Vancouver, and I'm living in Victoria at this time. In Vancouver, I'm going into a coffee shop, and then on my left, who it is? Marie. I'm like, hey, you remember me? And then from there, our love affair, our love story continued. It's almost like there was no time gap. And then she actually inspired me and helped me to finish my book, because I was in writer's block and I couldn't finish. And I was able to write another 15, 20 chapters. But I think some of the more important chapters I write about is what is love. In my interpretation, what the meaning of love is. And because, a lot of people that have read my book have said, Alex, we don't feel this sort of love or romance in our generation. We're not allowed to feel this. And they just feel so strongly when they read the chapters about Marie, about love, about passion. So I try to talk about it from a perspective of somebody who fell in love in 1987, as opposed to people now in 2020, 2024. They don't feel the same sort of emotions, the same emotions about love and passion, intensity, heartbreak. I don't think this generation is allowed to feel those emotions.
They don't even call each other boyfriend and girlfriend nowadays.
They
So,
call them partner,
yeah,
or something.
exactly. Go figure. I'm happy you were reunited with Marie. That's a wonderful love story.
Thank you.
It sounds
Thank you
like the
so much.
making of another book, even though it's a chapter in this one. We've got to
A lot of
run.
chapters.
Alex,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan.
My pleasure. The name of the book, folks, is How to Be a Dude in the 21st Century by Alex Cordero. It is a raw and unfiltered book that tackles the challenges that young men face today. It's an amazing read. It's a provocative read. And read it and don't be afraid to get canceled. Read it right on the subway with the book cover showing. Let everybody else know what you're reading. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time. on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.